Hey guys, and welcome to another huge episode of Triggered. Today's episode is going to be a big one, and it's likely, honestly, one of the more important interviews we've done, possibly ever. Today we're joined by former Trump trade advisor, China expert, and America First warrior, Peter Navarro. Peter is actually going to prison tomorrow. He was sentenced to 5 months behind bars, all because he didn't go along with the Democrats' sham January 6th committee, which we now know for certain had nothing to do with the truth. It had nothing to do with reality. It had nothing to do with an insurrection or the creation of a narrative, which it had everything to do with that, I guess, and everything to do with smearing the America First movement, pushing more baseless prosecutions, laundering more lies through the media, doing the bidding of the deep state and the Democrat Party. We've seen that. There's a reason the exculpatory evidence and videos would not be released. There's a reason the FBI is shockingly not at all interested in multiple bombs found outside of the DNC and the RNC. There's a reason the FBI director didn't want the videos out because too many of his people were actually in the crowd, seemingly doing nothing, probably inciting a quote-unquote insurrection, not actually doing anything to stop it. It's almost as if they had a plan, and this was by design. Peter stood up on principle by not complying with the committee's subpoena, and its historic legal fight is not yet over. Peter is also the author of the forthcoming book, The New MAGA Deal, the unofficial deplorable guide to Donald Trump's 2024 platform. And you can pre-order a copy at 45books.com. Peter goes through all of the detail. He goes through some of the great MAGA patriots who were in the cabinet, the few that weren't snakes, people who are likely going to be major contenders for serious cabinet-level positions in my father's second term, etc. So there's so much that we have to get into with Peter. But listen to the man. Understand what he did. His crime was not simply not complying with the January 6th committee. It's also that he was the guy, the architect, along with my father, of the incredible position, the strong stance against China, putting America first, not letting them shake us down like they do each and every time. And between tariffs and other vehicles, it was working. It was working. And honestly, in Washington, D.C., that's a cardinal sin. You can't take on China because, as we talked with Peter Schweitzer 2 weeks ago, seems far too many of our politicians are on the payroll. So this is going to be a really interesting conversation with Peter Navarro. He's a friend. Legitimately can't believe that this is happening to him. But I feel he's going to come out of it stronger because I think the rest of the country now finally sees just how far we have fallen, just how much we're acting like the dictators that we complain about other countries, just how much of a banana republic we've actually become. So this is going to be a really interesting conversation. Make sure that you guys are liking, make sure you're sharing, make sure you're subscribing so we can continue to get these messages out, okay? This is the stuff the mainstream media won't talk about, right? They're too busy calling you fascists while simultaneously literally jailing their political opposition. I know my father had a court cases last week, and that continues because they want to put him away not for 5 months, but for 700 years and possibly the death penalty. So if you're wondering who the fascists are, it's probably not us, folks. It's definitely the Democrats, the Joe Biden regime, and the sociopaths in the deep state. So remember also, guys, if you miss an episode here on Rumble, you can check them out on Apple, on Spotify. If you have friends that get their podcast that way, send it to them that way. Subscribe, download, send it to them. That way we get out there, okay? For all of the top headlines also that we discuss on the show so often, make sure to check out my news app, MXM News, like minute by minute, MXM. That way you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias. That's curated by myself, my friends. We'll show you both sides of a story. You can judge for yourself to see how badly you're probably being manipulated if you just go to the mainstream sources. But, you know, they always say build your own, so we did just that. So we need to keep getting this message out because it's all of you who make this possible. You guys are actually the resistance. You guys make it possible along with some of our incredible sponsors. That includes several new sponsors, including the 1775 Coffee Company, which is brewed to perfection, crafted to precision, and built on patriotism. 1775's coffee's farm-to-cup process means that there's quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single-sourced. And guys, we talk about it all the time. You can give your money to some woke coffee chain that hates your guts, or you can give it to companies that actually share your values. It seems like a no-brainer. We've seen what those other companies will do, weaponizing your hard-earned dollars. Don't go for it anymore. It's why the 1775 Coffee Company is joining forces with Rumble to support the causes that matter most. Your purchase helps support veterans' causes, groups fighting to protect the First Amendment, fighting to protect our great Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, and so much more. So go to 1775coffee.com. That's 1775coffee.com/Don Jr./DONJR for 10% off your first order. And guys, we talk about it all the time. We also have to protect ourselves in the face of the financial crisis we're likely to experience with the incompetence leading our government. And we have a brand new sponsor, the Birch Gold Group. Look, our country is literally $34 trillion in debt. Biden inflation is only making it worse every day. And the Fed just keeps printing more money. Brr goes the printer, right, folks? We see it all the time. This means your costs go up and your quality of life goes down. So as I say, I want you to be prepared. Don't just bury your head in the sand. Actually do something about it. Diversity and diversifying a portion of your savings into gold with the Birch Gold Group is a great way to do just that. Gold is a hedge against inflation, and Birch makes it easy to own. They'll take you through the process step by step. They'll answer your questions so you can educate yourself and you aren't doing things blindly. Use it as an opportunity to learn and help you convert your existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. Tax and penalty free. That's a big deal. If you can take these kind of steps, make these kind of changes and do it tax and penalty free, that seems like a no-brainer. So you don't have to pay a penny out of pocket. So to learn more, text Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898. Pretty simple. 989898. Text just Don Jr., DONJR to 989898 and get your free gold info kit. Again, that's DONJR, Don Jr. to 989898 by text. Learn more, educate yourself, take care of your family, secure against the insanity we see every day. And, okay, guys, joining me now, Trump trade advisor, the ultimate China hawk, the guy that held China accountable, America First warrior, and author of the new book, The New MAGA Deal, Peter Navarro. Peter, good to have you here, buddy. Under pretty bad circumstances, honestly.
My brother Don Jr., I can't thank you enough for publishing this New MAGA Deal. It's a book. It's been a labor of love. I think it's the most important book for the campaign 2024 to get your dad back in the White House where he belongs. And I spent about a year on it. There's about 10 other contributors, all of whom served in the Trump White House, in the Trump administration. And what inspired it, Don, is that I call it the red wedding speech that friggin' senile Joe Biden gave on the eve of the 2022 congressional races, where he went like full four-letter word on MAGA, right? And it's like, no. MAGA is the most sensible path in the world from a policy standpoint to peace, prosperity, and security, which is what we had during your father's administration. It was the most incredible 4 years of peace, prosperity, and security this country has had in this and the last century. And so what I wanted to do was help the deplorables out there, the MAGA believers understand exactly what's going to happen in a new Trump administration to bring back that world of peace, prosperity, and security. And it's going to be helpful not just for the Trump voters to understand what's at stake, but also to go out and effectively proselytize. And I'm asking people to do this. It's like, hey, if you don't support Donald Trump and you think MAGA folks are extremists, read this book. And here's what this book's about. It's about common sense policies on the economy, on security, on culture, on politics. And newmagadeal.com is where you can get it. And you're the man, Don, having that publishing arm, which allows folks like me to be able to speak to the world when much of the publishing industry right now is woke, cancel culture, just scum as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, not a lot of people would actually put this book out. I've dealt with this with a bunch of guys, congressmen, not people that are, alt-right or, everyone's alt-right, I guess, that doesn't go along with, Joe Biden and his idiocy, but yeah, that's what's shocking is, I mean, you ran trade for the United States. You guys actually were the only people that actually did that well in at least recent history. You held China accountable.
Yes.
And yet, they won't even let you publish a book about it. I mean, that's sort of crazy. So yeah, no, I did this with your friend Sergio as well, just to say, hey, we got to make sure that these people have a voice. The other side always says build your own, but they put up every roadblock imaginable. Well, we built a publishing arm to make sure that people like you could actually have and get that voice out.
Well, let me. I know you probably don't do this much on the show, but I gotta give the highest of praise to Sergio Gore. He's the guy who runs the publishing firm day to day for you, Don. I know you guys work really closely together, and he is like, I wrote this White House memoir called In Trump Time, because when I was in the White House, it was like, get this done as quickly as possible. And Sergio Gore has done just a beautiful job moving this. You can order it on newmagadeal.com now. It's going to,
we have it up at 45books.com as well. So,
yes. And it's going to be out, though, importantly, right at the convention, the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. It'll be coming out. You can get it in advance as a gift for your own copy. And, what we hope is that this book, from the time it comes out all the way to Election Day, will capture the imagination of voters who, frankly, look, it's not just that winning publishing is like the only place, really, one of the few places you can get books that speak in our voice. It's also that the mainstream legacy media doesn't explain realistically what Trump policies are. Everything is through the reality distortion field. When you talk about, like, take border security, for example, it's like every major country in the world has significant border security policies, and for good reason. And I remember back during the Trump administration trying to deal with the porous open border, and watched your dad do it literally overnight with the threat of tariffs. That's a whole nother tale, I can tell you. But it just makes sense to have secure borders where you don't allow an unrestricted flow of uneducated illegals into our job markets to drive down the wages and take away jobs from blue-collar Americans. You don't want Chinese communist military-age soldiers and Iranian terrorists coming across the border like they're doing now, and they're being picked up as we speak. You don't want the drug cartels to traffic women and children and send drugs across. And under Joe Biden and his policies, it's like it's like, come on now. And
Yeah.
look, we know why they're doing it. They want to stack the red states with voters and take over this country and make all of us slaves to their woke ideology. And we're having none of it. So this new mega deal book is all about why the struggle we're going through and why this election is literally the most important one in the last 100 years. I mean, it literally is the most important election, because if we don't take the White House and Congress back from these woke fools, there's not a lot of time left to turn their stuff around. There really is.
Yeah, listen, I don't know that I want the presidency without the House and without the Senate, right? Because like it'll just be, never-ending impeachments. I'll get to do another 50 hours of congressional testimony for treason or whatever else they make up, like Adam Schiff made up last time. And but I think what people watching, I think, Peter, need to understand, like, you are literally reporting to prison tomorrow for 5 months, and yet you're here and you're talking about MAGA principles for the next term. I mean, just so people understand, like, what kind of warrior you actually are, how important, like, it's not like it's soundbite stuff. You're actually not nearly as concerned about the political persecution of their enemies based on lies, based on this, but literally already taking proactive steps. I mean, honestly, I wish every conservative had your balls, but more importantly, your heart. Like, you're going to prison for 5 months starting tomorrow. You're here talking about MAGA principles for the next term and how to save our country. I think everyone watching has to understand that, because that's honestly, that's a lesson in patriotism right there. I mean, it's amazing to me. It truly is. And man, I wish we had 1 billion of you, not the people that we have in Washington, including all, the vast majority of those supposedly on our side. But first off, I guess
that's been disheartening. How many Republicans in the House have not seized the opportunity they got in 2022. But let me just explain to your viewers and listeners what's at stake here. And the broad stroke here is, look, men and women of America throughout our history have shed blood, lost their lives for the defense of this country, defense of what we stand for, defense of our values, defense of the Constitution. And for me, it's a much smaller sacrifice to be willing to go to prison, as I now have been ordered to do, to defend what is really one of the most important principles of the Constitution, which is the constitutional separation of powers. My hope and my mission here is that U.S. versus Peter Navarro will be, in fact, a landmark constitutional case. I believe it is, as it works its way through the appeals courts, on the constitutional separation of powers, on whether a partisan weaponized Congress can attack a president with subpoena power, and take away something that done. It goes back to the days of George Washington and the famous Jay Treaty, when George Washington, our first president, basically laid down the law on what's called executive privilege. And why is that important? Privilege has gotten like a bad connotation these days, but executive privilege, the Supreme Court has recognized this. It's critical for a president to be able to have folks like me in the White House, senior White House advisors, and we're called the alter egos of the president, which we're just like the president when it comes to the Congress not being able to subpoena us, to have confidential conversations to provide the best possible advice to a president so that the most effective decisions get made on behalf of the country. And what that J6 committee, Don, has done is just shred the constitutional separation of powers. And if I lose my appeal, executive privilege will be dead as we know it, and it'll
Yeah.
just become a partisan football of subpoenas flying all around. And we went
you
through
need a
this
president
crap.
to be able to act, frankly, on both sides, right? I mean,
Yeah,
clearly
exactly.
the other side, the Republicans will never fight the same way, unfortunately. Maybe this will teach them to, because, it's only a matter of time till that happens
Yeah.
to them. But the Democrats, they've been playing a different game for far too long. But do that. Run us through the case, because it's really, I mean, you're willing to go to prison on principle by simply saying, hey, while it's still playing out in appeals, I'm sort of surprised. Actually, nothing surprises me anymore that they would say, hey, you got to go report to prison, even though you're still in appeals, right? So there hasn't been a final verdict per se. But talk to the people about the details of what this is, because you're actually, you're taking a very strong stand on principle. You're going to suffer for that, but you believe in it enough. And again, I wish we had more people that actually believed in these things, because it is so critical to our country, but really it's so critical for the ability of the executive branch to actually function as it's designed to function in the Constitution.
Yeah. Well, it started with this so-called J6 committee, which your dad likes to call the J6 Unselect Committee, the witch hunt, as it were. And look, I was in the White House. I think you know this. I was only one of two of the policy people in the White House who was with your dad all the way from the campaign to the end. Stephen Miller was the other guy, and then Dan Scavino, of course, was on the communication side. Brothers in arms. And I went through that whole 4 years watching with dismay how, as soon as Pelosi in particular got a hold of the House of Representatives, it was a subpoena after subpoena, impeachment. But it was just wrong. It's just partisan weaponization using Congress. And your dad knew, and I knew, as soon as that J6 committee got formed, they weren't going to try to figure out what happened. They weren't going to wonder why FBI informants were up there letting people in there. They weren't going to wonder why the Secretary of Defense kept the National Guard 20 miles away. They weren't going to wonder why Nancy Pelosi wouldn't provide the kind of troops to defend the perimeter. All they wanted to do, and this is contrary to what congressional powers are. All they want to do is build a case so that they could indict and throw your dad in prison and stop him from getting back
using
to life.
catchphrases.
We knew that in the outset.
Violent insurrection. Everything was, treason. Oh, I mean, that's terrible. I mean, it's the first unarmed insurrection in the history of the world. I mean, something tells me that's bullshit, but hey, that's just me.
So I get a subpoena to come testify and produce documents before the J6 committee. And from my experience in the White House, first of all, there's more than 50 years of Department of Justice policies across Republican and Democrat administrations that say that there's a policy of absolute testimonial immunity against compelled testimony by Congress, right? You can't do it. Senior White House advisors can't be compelled to testify. So I got that going. And then, I called your dad. This was the second subpoena I'd gotten. And it's like, okay, what's our plan here? And it was like, he's invoking executive privilege like he did for almost every other person that went up to testify before that committee, right? So, okay, I invoke executive privilege. I get this. I tell him, I said it from the beginning to the end, to the committee. Dan George was the lawyer. It's like, presidents invoked executive privilege. Here's the important point. Not mine to waive by law. It's not my privilege. I can't waive it. Please, please go to the president and his attorneys. If they're willing to waive it, I'll do whatever you need. But I can't do that without violating my oath of office and dishonoring the Constitution. And so that played out. And what you wound up having, and one of the remarkable things in my sentencing hearing, Don, was the insistence by the court that this wasn't partisan. Okay, parse this. It's like,
sure, it wasn't.
Think about this. It's like the J6 committee. You got the seven most rabid of the impeached Trumpers on there.
Yeah.
plus
Liz Cheney.
Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, the two Trump haters. Okay. So they vote to hold me in contempt. And then it's a strict party line vote out of the Congress. So Democrat House votes to hold me in contempt, goes to the Department of Justice. Democrat-controlled DOJ indicts, arrests me, throws me in leg irons. That's a whole nother story. Prosecutes me. I go before a judge, and by the time we get to the trial, and I didn't think this could happen in our justice system. I mean, this is a broke justice system. He had stripped me of every single defense I could have presented, including the executive privilege issue. I couldn't even talk about it. And then, okay, do the math here, Tom. This will blow your mind. You probably know it. Okay, juries are taken out of voter registration pools, right? The vote against your dad in 2020 was 95% against Trump. Okay, 95%. The closest margin like that, pro-Biden margin, was Colorado, and the split was only 13%. So my point is that you had a jury pool, which was overwhelmingly Democrat, and during what's called voir dire, there were a number of them who wound up on the jury who said they didn't like your dad. All they had to get on the jury, again, it's like the judge would say, well, would that interfere with your judgment? They go, well, no. Okay, you're on. And here I am. And it would have been, the funny part about the whole thing in a black comedy way is that the judge acknowledged that we were in uncharted constitutional waters. Okay. Nobody had ever, I'm the first person ever charged with this. Uncharted constitutional waters. There's all sorts of important issues that need to be settled in the law up the chain in the higher courts. He said that he believed that I believed, and everybody else believed that I believed, that executive privilege had been invoked and it was my duty to do what I did.
Yeah.
Yet,
well, it seems to be so consistent. They waive all the norms, all the rules, all the precedent. It's waived in this case against Donald Trump. I mean, even a regular Republican may have gotten the benefit of the doubt on this one, but if it's Donald Trump, it doesn't matter if this has been done this way for 150 years, and there's we're just gonna. We're gonna push the boundaries, and we're gonna try something a little different. We're always gonna be in uncharted waters, even if there's clear precedent. Even if you're on appeals, it doesn't matter. Congratulations, you get to still go to prison, because we're gonna make sure they teach anyone, whether it was from that administration or from future ones, a lesson.
Well, what's important here. This isn't about me. It's about the constitutional separation of powers, but it's also about your dad in a way, because I'm kind of a canary in the coal mine. I mean, everything that they've done to me, they're doing to him. I had the leg irons arrest. I could have just reported peacefully.
I don't know, man. I'm looking at you. You're pretty jacked right now. They may have needed the leg irons.
He had he's in a essentially Democrat friendly venues. They try to get him in these Democrat, Atlanta, Manhattan, the District of Columbia, right?
Yeah. I mean, the grand jury for a case in Florida was put together in the District of Columbia. I wonder why that is, because maybe you could actually have objectivity in Florida, but that you're never going to get in D.C.
And this thing I told you about how they stripped me of all my defenses going before I even got to a jury, I'm seeing that same process play out with your dad.
So explain that. What does that mean exactly when you say you were stripped of all your defenses?
Okay, so if I had been able to present a full-throated defense, it was simple that the president had invoked executive privilege, not my privilege to waive. I tried to get him to, the J6 committee to contact her dad. They never did that. I would have been willing to testify. And there's a Department of Justice policy over 50 years that says it's against the law to compel me to testify. And I could have presented that to the jury, but the judge made this ruling based on this really, among others, this really obscure, you laugh at this. It's a 1963 case involving a mobster named James Licavoli, who refused to testify before Congress on the advice of his counsel. Okay. Yeah. And in the district court, they said, that's not an adequate defense. You're going to prison. Right. And out of that, the idea is that the standard becomes in Licavoli is that all I got to do is prove that you didn't show up. It doesn't matter why. Okay. Now, it's a ridiculous precedent because it has nothing to do with the implication of constitutional separation of powers or bigger constitutional issues. It should not have been applied to begin with, and equally or more important, it's going to be overturned, I believe, up the chain because it shouldn't apply. But when you do that, it's like they turned a constitutional case into a speeding ticket. Oh, he didn't show up, he's guilty. So when I got to the trial itself, I'm sitting in front of 12 people drawn from a jury pool that pretty blue state. I couldn't defend myself. If I got up on the stand and said executive privilege, couldn't do it. Couldn't provide any explanation. I mean, it could have been a heck of a trial. It could have been very interesting at that level. Yeah. But that's not what we have. And so it's up the chain. The other thing is, look, it's common in cases for once you're sentenced to provide what's called release pending appeal. Okay. So the judge could have done what another judge did in Steve Bannon's case, which is similar to mine, and simply said, you stay out until you have your chance to go through the appeals process. Yeah. My judge didn't do that.
But isn't that the purpose of the appeal? Is there no way to accelerate that so you could get that going? Because it sort of feels like, great, you could serve 5 months in prison, then you're exonerated later on, but like you don't get the 5 months back. I mean, it seems
that
like
is the irony.
A mockery of the whole system.
Yeah, as we're speaking, I've got 2 appeals going on. One's the big appeal of the case itself, and that's already kind of in process, but that's going to take a little bit of time. Yeah. But I also have like an emergency appeal at the appeals court, and it's already queued if the appeals court says no to go right to the Supreme Court. And that'll be decided hopefully within the next few days in some sense. But here's the important legal point. It's like, if a case like mine involves important constitutional issues that have a significant chance of being overturned that lead to a dismissal of the case or a retrial, then you grant the release pending appeal. Yeah. Mine's like my attorneys are going, wait, this is like the poster child for that. Yeah. I mean, everything we argued in all the motions and hearings leading up to the actual trial was about these constitutional issues. And so, I mean, look.
Yeah, and this is in front of the January 6th committee that literally had made up stories. Cassidy Hutchinson heard from someone that Donald Trump was stealing the beast. They knew it was bullshit. Like, of course he wasn't stealing the beast. By the way, if he tried to steal the beast, I'd actually be like, that's pretty cool. He'd probably do pretty well with the MAGA crowd. But, I mean, if anyone should be prosecuted, shouldn't it be them? Cassidy Hutchinson clearly, to me, lied before a congressional body, perjured herself grossly. Now, 3.5 years later, I guess this was last month, 19 pages of revision to her sworn testimony. Like, that's not like, oh, no, I messed up the date. I meant 3 hours before that. I'm sorry. I said 12. I meant 11. 19 pages of revision to testimony that was on every news station across the world as though it was the gospel. It was the furtherance of, the narrative and that this was a real insurrection because she knew. But 19 pages of did she even have 19 pages of testimony? I don't even know. It seems insane. And yet, they want to put you in prison, and that person was like, hey, guess what? You did what you needed to do. You lied at the time, but there's no problem because, we actually got the result we wanted. So there's literally no consequence to lying before a congressional body and before all of America on national TV about one of the biggest lies ever perpetrated on our country, which is that January 6th was, in fact, an insurrection rather than a bullshit calculated thing set up by governmental entities, which it obviously is.
Well, I think there's a good case that can be made that much of what those folks did on the J6 committee and a lot of the stuff that has been done on the Hill by Democrats with the help, the complicity of the media, the Morning Joes of this world and the Rachel Maddows, is flat out election interference. I mean, if you go back to the Russia hoax, that was election interference before the election, right? They were trying to stop the boss from getting elected by smearing him. And then once he got in, it was a attempted coup d'etat. They were trying to take him out with that. And then, going into 2020, all of that Russia hoax, Ukraine, all of that stuff was an attempt to prevent him from getting elected in 2020. And now, look, I go back to the moment I got my subpoena and then subsequently talked to your dad. It's like we knew, he knew from the outset that the purpose of that committee was to get Trump. That was it. And by the way, by the time I got my subpoena, I was kind of towards the end of the list. Your dad had invoked executive privilege for lots of folks that I served shoulder to shoulder and arm in arm, Scavino and
why were you
Meadows
different?
And Bannon and all of that. And we know what the game afoot here is. And so, if we can get the White House and the House and the Senate, and the Department of Justice back, it'd be interesting to find out some answers to some hard questions within the context of the intent of these things. Because they accuse us of election interference all the time. What are they doing?
Yeah. Well, why do you think you were treated so differently than so many others who were also, probably equally maybe not as hated? I guess you had the cardinal sin of taking on China rather than bending a knee to them. So maybe that's the difference. But what do you think the difference is?
Well, I think first of all, they needed a target and a scapegoat. They went after the two people that they brought to trial were me and Stephen K. Bannon. And what he and I share in common is our harsh criticism of communist China, which led them, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but something like within 6 minutes of Biden taking over the White House, communist China set out sanctions on a number of by Trump officials. And I was there, one of them. Steve was one of them. It was other folks, I think Pottinger and Pompeo. But, China has some influence. And the other thing is, I'm outspoken. I make no bones about the fact that these, like Steve and I were outspoken. They didn't prosecute. They chose not to prosecute either Dan Scavino. And I'm really happy for that because I love Dan. He's such a good man, good father, and a friend and to the president, a loyalist to the Patriot. They didn't prosecute Mark Meadows either. And the difference at the time was I didn't have a lawyer, and maybe they thought I was an easy mark. But I want to try to make sure that they regret this decision, in that we get this to the appeals court. We get this to the Supreme Court, even if I'm stuck in prison. And we settle the law on this. There has to be good law on constitutional separation of powers and executive privilege. That's my holy grail here. That's why I'm willing to go to prison if I have to. And coming back full circle to where we started, it makes it more comforting to know that you and Sergio are publishing the new MAGA deal, which may help get your father back in office and get this country back to peace, prosperity, and security. And so it's going to
let's talk about that a little bit, because I want to get into the details of that. I mean, you got the new MAGA deal, the unofficial deplorables guide to Donald Trump's 2024 platform. So it's really more of a tool book, honestly, than you're actually not going into details on this stuff that we're talking about as much as you are about what will be vitally important for voters to understand what the 2024 platform is, what it could be, as opposed to the America Last policies that we're getting. I mean, tell us more about that, because you have sort of two parts. You have sort of what you believe, and what I believe, frankly, most of the, a lot of the policies should be, most of those economic and otherwise. But you also kind of go through, 10 or 12 of the other guys like you, people who were loyalists. You had, Rick Grinnell, other sort of, MAGA guys, people that would be shunned by, the swamp, but that were really good in their roles, were effective, steadfast and loyal. Break that down a little bit for us.
Well, when I conceived this book, the idea was to have each chapter focus on a single policy and to have it written kind of op-ed length, like 800 to 1,000 words, so it's easily digestible, right?
Yep.
And if you look at the folks who are there, I, along with Rick, set the tone of the book at the beginning, because we talk about what MAGA means, and I handle it, I call it the Iron MAGA Triangle. It's the end endless wars, secure borders, and fair trade. That's kind of, when your dad walked down the escalator with Melania, that was kind of the core of his principles. And then Rick takes up where I leave off with a really nice chapter on what populist economic nationalism means and why it doesn't mean America alone, right? So that's the stage is set. And then you have chapters on, everything, like Russ Vogt, who is our OMB director, and he's just fighting the good fight now on Capitol Hill to prevent us from going off a fiscal cliff. He handles like the budget stuff. I got David Bernhardt, who was a great the Department of Interior cabinet secretary, and I worked with him closely during the administration, doing things like pulling Chinese drones down from the air so we wouldn't use those. But he handles like the energy policy. We've got Frank Gaffney, who does a great job on some of the China financial issues, like money flows coming in and out. A good buddy of mine who was a co-author on my Death by China book, Greg Autry, talks about the Chinese space race. They want to get to the moon before we do and claim all the raw materials up there and be able to shoot nuclear weapons down us. So we kind of explain that. And just every single issue. And what I did with my research team is we went and faithfully read your dad's speeches, looked at the website for the policy papers, and also the videos that are up there. I know and have very high regard for the two speechwriters, Vince Haley and Ross Worthington. And it's very much a collaborative affair. So folks who read the new MAGA deal will really get an inside textured look at how all this works. And the thing I want to stress here, Don, is that the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump right now, stripped of everything, is that Donald Trump showed over 4 years that he knows how to deliver economic prosperity, border security, economic security, national security, and peace with Russia, North Korea, Communist China, Iran. He did that. And everybody now knows that Joe Biden can't do that. Okay.
Doesn't seem like Joe Biden can do a lot.
Doesn't seem like he can. So what we did in the 4 years of the first Trump administration was beautiful policy. But what's so beautiful about what's going to happen next is that it's up like 3 or 4 or 5 notches in terms of being able to do things. I mean, it's going to be, and he's going to hit the ground running. Yeah, when we first got there, there's a learning curve, right? And it took us a while. And look, even if we lose the Congress, which I hope we don't, I'm telling you, and I spent most of my time in the White House helping to do this, executive orders are a hammer, and they get stuff done. They get them done quickly rather than having to wait around for those fools on Capitol Hill to pass stuff. But it's going to be day one, hit the ground running. And the last thing I'll tell you is we actually explain what actual policies are going to be implemented. And there's other, like there's stuff, I've got some really nice chapters on the whole transgender and women's sports and all that stuff like that, that deal with some of these culture wars. Mike Davis, who's just, that guy is a legal hammer. He's got.
I'd love him to be AG. I don't think he'll get confirmed, but let him be their temporary AG for a couple of months. That would be. We'll get everyone else approved. They'll say, "We've had enough. We surrender. You can have whoever you want."
So look, newmagadeal.com. Don Jr. and Sergio Gore are the masterminds of the whole thing, and I really hope and believe that this book will make a difference. A lot of books don't. Nobody notices them.
Well, it's also a path forward, right? People on the show, they're upset with what's going on. I think there's a lot of people around the country who are, waking up to just how far we've fallen. But the answer is always like, hey, you can sit there and bitch about everything, but this is actually a path forward, right? I mean, this is a plan for the future, and that's what's probably thus far been missing. Now, they may not follow it to a T. It's the unofficial guide, but listen, in publishing it and going through it, I'm like, man, like I'm on board with all of these things. I mean, you were obviously the China hawk, right? Taking on China as our greatest threat, economically, militarily, any other way that was there. I mean, you were the guy in the Trump White House that saw all of the China chaos coming. What role do you think? Do you think that has a role in your persecution, given how the swamp has sold our country out to China? I mean, I sort of touched on that earlier, but I wasn't sure. Obviously, you were just an outspoken voice, and therefore you were going to be made an example of. But do you think it was more so because also the positions on China and how everyone, it seems, in Washington, D.C. is, somehow or other, economically linked to China's success far more than they are to America's?
No doubt. And I buried one lead when you said forward. I need to give a pat on the back to Stephen K. Bannon, because he writes a heck of a forward, which kind of ties all of that together, because the forward of the book starts when your dad got elected in 2016, and it's like the day after. And I go on CNBC, and the futures markets are headed dead red down, and the international markets have collapsed overnight. And I just simply sit there and talk about what your dad's going to do. And it actually turned the thing around.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. I've seen that a bunch, right? Every time Trump won like a primary state, or every time his polling went up, literally China's stock market went crumbling down. I mean, they're literally so clearly linked. Like, isn't that almost all you need? Like, if your greatest threat, your greatest enemy, literally is predicting, what's coming in the future, but also suffering because of it. Like, isn't that a positive? And how involved are they going to be in sabotaging this election, by the way?
Well, look, to your point about whether my role as a China hawk, Steve left the administration like early in 2017, I chided him about it because we could have used him. But I was like, there wasn't a lot of guys like me around. And I think if I say this humbly, but I do believe there's a general understanding that I was one of the more effective public servants helping move things through the White House in what I called in Trump time. I mean,
I think that's right.
Breaking the logjam on steel and aluminum tariffs was a big deal. Forcing the Chinese to the table, getting the tariffs past some of the internal opposition in the White House, moving it. And look, nobody's happier that I'm going to prison than Xi Jinping, the dictator of China. I can assure you, they're like going, wow, this is great. Navarro, we got rid of him.
Yeah.
But look, they are our greatest existential threat. But the problem is Joe Biden has created a whole range of threats where
the Biden family's on their
with.
payroll, so it's natural. That was one of the greatest investments China ever made, was in a crackhead like Hunter, because they basically owned this administration, and our Congress and our media is too weak to actually look at it. I mean, by the way, 2024. I mean, what should our trade strategy towards China be? In the next Trump administration, should it be the same as we had? Should it be more aggressive? How far can you push it? Because you understand there's consequence to all of these actions, but where do you think you have to go?
Well, I've always, I'm a tough China hawk, but I'm more of a Teddy Roosevelt kind of proponent. You talk softly, carry a big stick. I mean, I don't think we need to go out and beat on our chest and say we're gonna whatever. But what we need to do, and your dad was ready to do this in a second term, which he fully believed at the time he was going to get before the damn thing got stolen, was to really begin the process of decoupling from China by significantly raising tariffs to the point where you begin to lock Chinese goods out.
Yeah. The
problem, of course, that we have to navigate, and it's a serious problem that I spent a lot of my time in the White House trying to deal with, was that China has a chokehold on key elements of our supply chain, as well as end-use products. I mean, pharmaceuticals are kind of the poster child.
Yeah, rubber gloves, surgical gloves. I mean,
well,
PPE type
penicillin,
products. Yeah,
vitamin C. I mean, I think one of the best executive orders I drafted and your dad signed was one that was aimed at Buy American and bringing our supply chains home for pharmaceuticals. And we made some pretty good inroads as a result of your dad. So that's the balance. But we simply, look, here's the thing. The most remarkable statistic, and this was true back then, is that our trade deficit with China, communist China, never forget that, has been roughly equal to their annual military budget.
Yeah. So
when we go in and buy their crap, we're essentially arming the missiles, the aircraft carriers, the submarines, the fifth generation fighter jets they stole from us in terms of designs that may well at some point and possibly in the near future sink an aircraft carrier of America with 5,000 souls on it, headed right to the bottom of the Taiwan Strait. That's what we don't understand. And as a country, that's what the Republicans and Democrats on the Hill haven't wrapped their head around. But that's what your dad understood. That's what I understood. And that's why economic security is national security, right? Economic security is national security. To the extent we stop China from their economic aggression, we're able to choke off their military capabilities. But we're not doing that right now. And look, we get back to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and the brother James, the Biden crime family. I mean, a Hunter Biden laptop from hell is the most revealing expose of a grift scheme selling out this country that you could ever imagine. And I'm going to prison and Joe Biden sitting in the White House. Go figure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's bring it back home. Obviously, China's a huge threat, but in one of your chapters, you talk about, our large companies, endangering and engaging in, endangering our children, but by engaging in wokefare.
Yes.
You call it wokefare, which actually I think I've never heard the term, but it actually makes total sense. And against other companies and customers too. And we've seen that, the cancellation of, whether it's employees or these, they're going all in. Get into detail on wokefare and solutions, how we can handle that, coming from government.
It's difficult to understand all of the factors that have gone into the corporate making decision, but by and large, the companies, on the S&P 500, the major corporations of this country, the people who run these corporations have decided that woke policies are the way to go. So it's like, rather than focusing just on profits, it's the equity, the diversity, all of that stuff. And as a practical matter, the way that manifests at Woke Fair is that all of their advertising dollars begin to be withdrawn from conservative media, right? So they literally choke that. So that's why, like, Rumble we need Rumble because it becomes an alternative. That's why we need some of these other things. But it's like, it's part of the legacy media strategy, is the corporatists working with the legacy media. And then just the policies where corporations now, the employees there, dare not speak about anything related to religion or politics, or, if somebody finds out that, by God, they voted for Trump, it puts their job at risk.
Yeah, and listen, I've spent my whole, since the White House, I've spent my whole trying to build this sort of alternative economy, right? Whether it's with, Winning Team publishing your book, right? Doing that, trying to give an outlet, whether it's, I think I was the second verified user on Rumble after Dan Bongino. I doing, MXM News, to make sure that people can get sort of the not Google curated version of what's actually going on right there, with Public Square. To try to align like-minded individuals, patriotic businesses with other small businesses in the area, so that you can vote with your wallet. It's so critical because corporate America has totally forgotten about actual Americans. They don't care. I know so many people that work in corporate America that you say Merry Christmas, you're going to be laid off. Now, if you say Merry whatever, some other let's call it a checkbox religion, that's totally fine. And it's gotten so disgusting that I think it's truly something that we have to work on so greatly here in this country, because I know people that they walk to work they're in fear at work every day for saying something that would be common vernacular, that would have at any other time in history just been a nice courteous gesture. If you say to Merry Christmas to someone, you don't know that they don't celebrate Christmas, and you're going to the gulags. I work with redballoon.org, a job board that actually finds conservative positions with conservative people, so that you don't have to be subjected to sort of, the trans mafia at corporate HR. There's so many of these things out there that are doing it, and I think it's a really important fight. We got to be fighting all the battles, but it's only recently that we've sort of engaged on all these other fronts that we've allowed to be taken over and commandeered by so many on the other side. So, it's awesome that you acknowledge that and see that as well, because I feel like sometimes it's like, hey man, I'm out there trying to do this, but it ain't easy, and we need people on board to actually make that happen. Once they figure it out and they know, it seems so obvious, because they're literally going after our very soul, as a nation, the principles that we all grew up, knowing and loving. They've just eliminated all forms of common sense or even common decency or courtesy. It's just out the window for an agenda that seems, frankly, to be nothing other than just destructive, while our enemies probably laugh their asses off that it's going on here right now.
Well, one of the remarkable things about your dad and his administration is he turned the Republican Party into the party of the working class, the blue collar Americans, the middle class folks. And we have to remember, Don, that the corporations, particularly the bigger ones, have a vested interest in opposing just about every policy that Donald Trump stands for. I mean, they love the cheap labor coming across the border. They love the unrestricted visas for the higher end kind of workers. They love the kind of the globalist mentality. And frankly, a lot of the people who run American corporations are not Americans. These executives are from all over the world. Populist economic nationalism is inapta to them, and whatever it is, ultimately we know they've made a choice, and we have to fight back. And woke-fare is just a very, very destructive institution in this country, just as lawfare is. And I spent a lot of time in the new MAGA deal talking about the whole concept of lawfare with the help of guys like Mike Davis, which is, using our legal system to promote partisan ends. So we got a battle on our hands, brother, but we're going to fight the best way we know how. And that's what information is power.
Well, I guess, I appreciate you doing it. It's sort of, like I said, it's sort of surreal to even have this conversation, knowing that, he's supposed to report to prison tomorrow. I remember, I sent over a copy of my ID because you're going to be down in Miami. I was like, I'm going to, just because that I needed to do that now in advance to be able to come even visit and just sort of pay my respects for that. Like, what have you been told about, like, what to even expect? Do you anticipate serving all 5 months? Will you be writing even more from there? I assume you get a little bit more time. And, how much does this all sort of motivate you to help get the job done in November? I mean, has this been sort of, does it, I noticed me when I get back in the corner, it actually makes me fight so much harder. Russia sort of brought out an animal in me that I didn't know, because I was like, bullshit, I'm not sitting in the sidelines like, my lawyers, you can't go on TV, you can't say that, you can't fight back. It's like, the fuck I can, and I'm going to. Like, I know no other way. Like, I got too much of the Trump genes. What have you sort of heard about all of that?
Well, we have to speak up. Look, it's been interesting. I've had a number of folks contact me who've had the prison experience. But the common thread is prison. You go walk in there, you strip, and they give you their clothes, and you're their property for the rest of the time you're there. It's unclear whether there'd be any reduction in the sentence at this point. What I'm just trying to focus on now is just standing tall and doing what I need to and get to the other side of it. Just thinking about how so many men and women in this country have lost their lives or lost their limbs. I remember when I was in the administration, I have occasion to go up to Walter Reed, and I'd see these quadriplegic, paraplegics in the gym, trying to recover their lives. And, like, my sacrifice is small compared to them, but the payoff's high, Don. If the U.S. versus Peter Navarro ends well at the higher levels of court and preserves the constitutional separation of powers and executive privilege as a tool of effective presidential decision making, I'm at peace with that. That's a good life. So, we'll see. As your dad loves to say, we'll see what happens, brother.
Well,
I look forward to seeing you and Sergio.
We'll do that
on the other side of the glass, I guess.
I guess.
Keep your rifle at home, though.
I'd make some jokes right now, but it seems totally inappropriate. It's hard to turn off my personality when it comes to some of these things, but I'm gonna let it go. But Hey, man, it's just an honor. Appreciate the friendship. I really appreciate the patriotism. I think, the people watching understand. I mean, you and Steve are the ones that they're doing these things to. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you just keep fighting the way you do. So, guys, you can check out and pre-order Peter's book at thenewmagadeal.com, or you can get it at 45books.com. We're publishing it for him, trying to get it out there. Again, for those of you who ask about, what's the path forward, not just complaining about the solutions or bitching about what's going on right now, but the path forward, Peter really does a great job breaking that down. As you can see, even from the start of this interview, I was shocked. I was like, hey, it wasn't bitching about getting locked up by a rogue dictatorial government that's a banana republic regime in America right now. It was about, no, this is what we have to do going forward and how to fight back. And that shows you the measure of the man, and I think that's so critical. So the newmagadeal.com or 45books.com. Check out Peter's book there. Peter, we will be in touch, man. I will see you down there, and it's an honor and a privilege, man. Thank you so much for all that you do. Keep fighting, and we'll have you back fighting in no time again soon, bud.
You keep doing what you're doing, brother.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Guys, that was such an important interview. Don't forget, you can check out Peter's book at newmagadeal.com or at 45books.com. Check it out. Support a great America First warrior. Hear what the other people that are in his circle of trust that we should all be trusting think about the next administration, so we can make sure we can effectuate that and make that happen. Make sure you're liking, you're sharing, and you're subscribing, folks. I see the difference between how many people are watching and how many people are like. It's so easy. Just hit that like button. And don't forget to check out our incredible sponsors. Go to 1775coffee.com/Don Jr., DONJR, for 10% off your first order. Support a great patriotic company. Support businesses that support programming like this. It's a big deal. And also, guys, don't forget, protect yourself against Biden inflation with the Birch Gold Group. To learn more, text Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898. Really easy. Text Don Jr. to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold so you can learn more, so you can educate yourself. Also, guys, don't forget to share this with your friends if they get their podcast on Spotify or iTunes podcasts. This is how we get the message out. This is how we fight back. Keep going, and I'll see you guys on Thursday.